Welcome, Seminole fans, here to Carter Finley Stadium alongside Ryan Pensy. I'm Scott Kotick, and Ryan, this is an atmosphere that the Noles struggle to play in, honestly, the past few years. When that wolf howl gets going and the stadium gets loud, it might not seem like it, but it's deceptively loud. It's a tough place to play.
It is, Scott, and if you look at this stadium, it's very low inside, and the fans are able to get very loud. They have a great student section that comes out in full force. I know there were some tickets that were still available, but you expect this is going to be a very loud and boisterous crowd. And the biggest thing that Florida State can do to eliminate some of that is just to come out and play well early. If you look back to the last 2 weeks, Florida State's defense has allowed the opposing offense to get out and get to an early start, and that's the easiest way to take an opposing crowd out of it, is just come out and get an early stop.
NC State's got a lot of big playability, namely Mike Glennon throwing the ball down the field, those speedy wide receivers. What's the key for Florida State? Just to play good defense, because I think when you look at it, they have three offensive linemen, key offensive linemen out in this game, but that doesn't stop their big playability.
No, it doesn't. And one of the things when I talked with Mark Stoops earlier this week, he talked about the release of Mike Glennon and said how fast it is. So even if he's under pressure, you know he's not going to scramble like many of the quarterbacks we've seen this year, but he's able to get the ball away quickly. And with this group, you know, just kind of like it was with Taj Boyd, you know, something that's a 5 or a 10-yard play can turn into 15 or 20 if you don't get him slowed down. That's just going to get that crowd rejuvenated. Got to get pressure on Glennon, and you got to make him make some mistakes. And he was key to making mistakes last week against Miami. Really some unquestionable mistakes that you don't typically see out of a Tom O'Brien football team. So you hope that you might be able to continue that again this week.
They did have, 8 turnovers last week against Miami. You look at the offensive side of the ball for Florida State, the same old song and dance. If we can just establish the run, Florida State's a very, very challenging team to play against. You have Chris Thompson, a Wilder running the ball. It's fun to watch. How much is it important for Florida State just to establish that first and foremost? Because NC State doesn't have the greatest defense, but they can stop the run.
Well, they have a good defense, and I tell you, he hasn't played well this year, but Emerson is still one of the top cornerbacks that's out there, and you don't want to get into a battle with him tonight. So I think Florida State has to establish the run. You got to give the ball to as many different guys as you can, and hope that somebody gets into a groove. We've seen Chris Thompson, we've seen James Wilder get into grooves. Maybe a nice Devontae Freeman's opportunity to get out there and bust out a couple of big runs. But I think that Florida State has a lot of different weapons in the wide receiving core, and it's time to go and put those to use. If E.J. Manuel can continue to do what he's been doing and not force the football and look and see some of those checkdowns, I think Florida State could have a big night tonight.
Let's get right to it. 2 keys to the game. This is an important game for Florida State. Remember, Florida State has not started at 6-0 since 1999. What are the 2 things that we need to do to make it the second time since 99?
Well, we talked about it. You got to get pressure on Glennon. You got to make sure that you cause some problems with him on that offensive line. The 5th different offensive line in 6 games. Tom O'Brien talked this week. They've only got 1 player at a position that they're comfortable with. And the other big thing, and we really haven't talked about it a lot this year, is special teams. In one of these games, every opportunity, every field goal, every punt, every kickoff return is going to count. So you want to make sure that you tie up those loose ends tonight.
The one thing we know after being up here a number of times, this crowd really does get into it. And for NC State, it's almost like they're Super Bowl playing in it. For me, the one thing is don't let the atmosphere get to you. You know, kind of, not to sound like Coach Fisher, but eliminate the clutter. The Noles can do that and just don't turn the ball over. Thankfully, that hasn't been a problem yet. You never know when it's going to rear its ugly head. Those 2 things, Noles walk out of here with a win.
You're right, and we'll be looking forward to this game tonight, and hopefully Florida State can move on, get ready for Boston College next week, and head back to Doak Campbell Stadium with a victory.
Everything starts at just after 8 o'clock here in Raleigh, North Carolina. You can follow everything on our Gameday Central page by visiting Seminoles.com/Gameday. Lots of great information both on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube throughout the game. So for Ryan Pensy, I'm Scott Kotick. We'll see you after the game, Seminole fans.